I heard her footsteps before I even realized I was awake. Light, quick, almost hesitant. Like she was trying not to disturb something. But there was nothing left to disturb in this house, not really. Just me. And the sound of her bare feet brushing past the kitchen table, settling onto the hallway rug. She didn't say anything right away. Just curled up there in her panda pajamas, knees pulled to her chest, eyes too wide, too alert for a child who should have been sleeping. "They're taking everything tonight," she whispered. And I nodded. Not because I understood. Not exactly. But because something in her voice clicked against something in me, like a match struck in a dark room. The kind of truth that doesn't need explanation. The kind that's been hovering for weeks, waiting for someone to say it out loud. I set the teacup down on the counter. It had gone cold. The sky outside was dull gray, the kind that tells you it'll rain without a storm. Inside, something had shifted too. Just slightly. A different kind of silence. The kind that settles in right before a foundation gives way. I didn't ask who she meant. Or what. I just stood there, barefoot, listening. Because in that moment, I knew she wasn't wrong. The kettle clicked off behind me, unnoticed. I didn't move to pour it. Didn't even glance at the clock. That moment, her voice, her posture, the eerie certainty of her words, it stayed with me, pressing against the inside of my chest like a heartbeat in the wrong place. I leaned against the counter and looked at her. Her small back curved like a question mark against the floor. She was supposed to be sleeping, tucked in with her stuffed animals and nightlight. But instead, she'd come down here in the dark. To warn me. "They're taking everything tonight." The words looped in my mind as I walked to the window and looked out. Nothing unusual. The same gravel driveway. The same porch light I'd forgotten to switch off. The same overgrown hedge that Tom had once promised to trim. Everything looked untouched, but I knew better. Emma had seen something. Heard something. Or maybe just felt it, whatever children feel when the grown-ups around them start making plans in whispers and closed-door conversations. I sat down beside her on the rug, knees protesting the cold floor. She didn't look at me. Her eyes stayed fixed ahead, toward the front door. "You heard them?" I asked gently. She nodded, slowly. Her thumb rubbed a spot on her pajama cuff, like she was erasing something that wouldn't come out. "They said you're not safe here anymore." The words were small. Not scared, not dramatic. Just delivered like a report from a scout who'd returned from enemy territory. I reached out and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. "Who said that?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "Aunt Lisa. And Uncle Tom. In the living room." I was supposed to be asleep. Of course she wasn't. Children know when something's off. They can smell it in the air, feel it in the way voices shift. She curled closer to me, and I put my arm around her shoulders. The hallway light flickered once, old wiring, or maybe just the house reacting to the shift that had begun days ago. Lisa had been colder lately. Quieter. Her smiles had thinned, her hugs grown distant. I'd chalked it up to stress. Or grief. Or the strain of single parenting. But now, in the quiet of that hallway, something different stirred inside me. Something less forgiving. The next morning, I found Lisa at the stove. She was wearing one of my old sweaters, sleeves pushed up, stirring oatmeal with her usual air of distraction. "You know Emma didn't sleep last night," I said as I walked in. She looked over, eyebrows raised, but didn't answer right away. "She came downstairs around 3. Said she heard you and Tom talking. Said you said I wasn't safe here anymore." Lisa didn't flinch. Just kept stirring. She misheard. "She said you were talking about taking everything. Tonight." That got her attention. The spoon paused mid-air. Mom, she said, turning to face me, we were discussing how to make things easier for you. You've been overwhelmed. It's not healthy for you to manage all this alone. All this. She waved a hand around, as if the kitchen walls, the house, my life, all of it, was just clutter. A burden to be lightened. For my benefit, of course. I'm not overwhelmed, I said calmly. She smiled then, that pitying smile that tries to pretend it isn't condescending. It's okay if you are. There's no shame in it. Lisa, I said, keeping my voice steady, are you planning to move me out of my house? Of course not, she said too quickly. But Tom and I were looking into some options. Just possibilities. Somewhere quieter. Smaller. More manageable. More manageable. As if I were a storage unit. Something to downsize. We were also wondering about your finances, she added, almost casually. Dad's old accounts, your pension. There might be ways to consolidate things, make sure you're secure going forward. I didn't answer. I walked to the window again and stared out, just as I had the night before. This time, the sky was clear, but the feeling was the same. That pressure in the air. That sense of something closing in. Behind me, Lisa filled 2 bowls and called Emma to the table. I watched as my granddaughter sat down, too quiet for a child her age. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. They think I'm slipping. That I'm soft. Manageable. I made tea and sat across from Emma, gently brushing my hand over hers as she lifted her spoon. She leaned into my side for just a moment. A silent gesture. A tether. Later that day, I found the folder. The one in the linen closet, hidden behind the extra towels. I hadn't looked at it in over a year, not since Richard passed. But I remembered the shape of it. The weight. Cream-colored with a brass clip. Inside were the original deeds, the will we'd written together, the investment statements Richard had kept so meticulously. I sat on the edge of the bed and flipped through it slowly. Every document was still in order. Every account still active. Nothing to suggest any concern. But I made the call anyway. My lawyer, Elaine, answered on the second ring. Her voice hadn't changed in years, sharp, dry, precise. I need to review the power of attorney forms we filed, I said. And I want to revoke any existing permissions. She didn't ask why. Just said, come in tomorrow. Bring everything. I did. The next morning, Lisa found me at the dining table, documents spread in neat rows. She looked from the papers to my face, but said nothing at first. I'm restructuring some things, I said. Updating permissions. She blinked. Is something wrong? No, I said, sliding a notarized revocation form into a blue folder. Just making sure everything reflects my current wishes. Emma wandered in then, still in pajamas, rubbing her eyes. She climbed into my lap, and I held her for a long moment. Lisa watched us. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction. You don't have to be so defensive, she said. We're just trying to help. I know, I said. And I smiled, just enough to make her uneasy. That's what makes it dangerous. She didn't reply. Just left the room. Emma looked up at me. Are you okay, Nana? I kissed the top of her head. I'm better now. That afternoon, I went to the bank. Closed the joint account. Opened a new one. Moved the bulk of my savings. Set up alerts and restrictions. Elaine had said it plainly in her office the day before. Your children can't make legal decisions on your behalf without your consent. They can't move assets. They can't sell property. Not unless you sign. I wasn't going to sign. Back home, I started noticing more things. The missing file from the desk. The locked drawer slightly ajar. Emma's offhand remark that, "Mommy says grown-ups forget stuff a lot." Little clues. Small fractures. That evening, I went into the garage. Richard's old tool chest sat in the corner, still dusty. Inside, tucked beneath an old wrench and some duct tape, was the digital recorder he'd used to tape bird sounds in the backyard. I charged it overnight. The next morning, when Lisa asked if I wanted to come to dinner at Tom's that weekend, just a small family thing, she said, I smiled and said yes. The recorder fit neatly inside my purse. I had no intention of making a scene. But I was going to listen. Tom's house looked cleaner than usual. The patio lights were lit early, and someone had polished the glass of the back door, something they never did unless they were expecting company they needed to impress. Lisa met me at the front steps. She wore too much perfume and a smile that felt rehearsed. Her eyes flicked to the bag on my shoulder. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I didn't," I said simply. "Just my things." Inside, the table was already set. Cloth napkins, candles, even the fancy cutlery Lisa usually reserved for holidays. I hadn't seen her bother with a real tablecloth since her anniversary dinner 3 years ago. But tonight, everything was in place. Emma wasn't there. "She's with a friend," Tom said as he handed me a glass of wine. "Sleepover. Thought it would be nice to have some adult conversation." I took the glass. Sipped. Waited. Dinner was takeout, Italian, by the smell of it, from that bistro Tom always boasted about but rarely paid for himself. Lisa set the containers on the table like they were catered. Halfway through the meal, the papers appeared. Not announced. Just placed gently beside the breadbasket. A manila folder, just like the ones Richard used. Too clean. Too expected. "Just something we've been working on," Tom said as I set down my fork. Lisa smoothed the front of her blouse, all graciousness. "It's nothing binding," she added quickly. "Only if you feel comfortable." I opened the folder. Power of attorney. Durable. Full access. Healthcare proxy included. All prepared. All filled in. All I had to do was sign. I looked up. "Who drew this up?" "Gregory. Lisa's cousin," Tom said. "He specializes in elder care law." "And this came up how?" I asked. My voice was even. "Well, we've been worried," Lisa said. "You've seemed scattered lately. Forgetting things. Leaving the stove on." "I haven't left the stove on. We're just trying to make sure you're protected." I closed the folder and placed it neatly back on the table. "I'll think about it." Tom looked mildly irritated. Lisa just nodded. "Too quickly." "You don't have to decide tonight," she said. I smiled. "No. I don't." What I didn't say, what I didn't need to say, was that my phone, beneath my napkin, had recorded the entire exchange. I excused myself not long after. Thanked them for dinner. Declined dessert. Back at home, I played the recording twice. Once with my lawyer on speaker. The second time alone. Elaine called the next morning. "It's enough." "Enough for what?" "To demonstrate intent," she said. "To establish motive. If they try anything else, we're already a step ahead." And they did try. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Postmarked from the county courthouse. I opened it in the kitchen, beneath the same window where Richard and I used to sit with coffee on winter mornings. Petition for guardianship. Lisa was listed as petitioner. Tom as supporting party. Basis, memory lapses. Financial confusion. Safety concerns. I read it through twice. Slowly. Then once more out loud, as if the weight of the words might shift if spoken. Elaine was calm on the phone. "This isn't uncommon," she said. "But we've prepared. We'll file the response by end of day." For the first time in weeks, I cried. Not because I was scared. But because I was angry. Deeply, bone-tired angry. They wanted to put me in a corner. Quiet me. Strip away the last parts of my life that were still mine. The hearing came faster than I expected. A plain room. Gray walls. A judge with a lined face and a firm voice. Lisa spoke first. She was careful. Practiced. Concerned. "She's left doors open. Forgotten appointments. We're just trying to protect her assets from being mismanaged. We love her." Tom added numbers. Claimed knowledge of my accounts. Referred to me as the respondent, never as his mother-in-law. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. My knees ached, but I made no complaint. Elaine handed the judge a folder. Thick. Neatly tabbed. Updated medical records. A doctor's note attesting to my cognitive clarity. Financial statements. Screenshots of my online banking activity. Grocery receipts. A copy of the audio recording. I spoke only once. "Your Honor, I raised these children. Fed them. Housed them. Helped them through every disaster of their own making. They are not concerned for my well-being. They are concerned about my autonomy. And what they lose if I keep it." The judge read in silence. Then looked up. Petition denied. Lisa didn't cry. Tom clenched his jaw. Elaine nodded once, then helped me gather my papers. We walked out without looking back. The next day, I listed the house. The realtor blinked. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. It sold within a week. I packed what I wanted. Donated the rest." Lisa didn't call. Tom sent one message, "I hope you're proud of what you've done." I didn't answer. Emma called, though. "Nana, Mom says you're moving." "I am, sweetheart. Can I still come visit?" "Always," I said. My new apartment sat by the lake. Small. Clean. Full of light. Emma came every Sunday. We planted herbs on the balcony and called it our island. She still wore the panda pajamas. Said they were lucky. And maybe they were. Because I remembered something in that quiet kitchen, when she first crept in and whispered the warning. I remembered who I was. And I stayed awake. Even when they hoped I'd stay silent. It arrived on a Thursday, tucked in a plain envelope with the county seal. I opened it at the kitchen counter, in the quiet after breakfast, where I used to read recipes or make grocery lists. But the words on this paper weren't domestic. They were surgical. Petition for guardianship. Filed by Lisa and Fisher. Supported by Thomas R. Fisher. I read it twice before I sat down. Then once more, slower. They cited forgetfulness. Disorganized finances. Safety concerns. I could picture them sitting together in that too-small living room, Lisa on the couch, Tom pacing, tossing out lines like cognitive decline and elder protection statutes. Probably with a cousin on speakerphone, a lawyer who never met me but had a form ready anyway. My tea went cold while I stared at the document. There was something bone-deep cruel about it. Not even the betrayal, but the calculation. The way it was all laid out in polite language, sanitized like a hospital room. They weren't asking for a conversation. They were asking for control. I called Elaine. She listened in silence, then asked me to bring the letter and come in the next morning. "We're prepared," she said. "We'll respond by Monday." Prepared. She said it like a shield being lifted. Over the next few days, I gathered what she requested: my financial statements, bank activity logs, receipts for groceries and gas, records of my online account activity, copies of recent medical appointments. All of it mundane. All of it ordinary. And all of it proof. Emma came by that Sunday. She sat with her legs crossed on the couch, absently stroking the ears of her stuffed rabbit, sensing something but not asking. I watched her while she talked about school, how the teacher was too cheery, and her best friend was maybe not a best friend anymore. Her voice was steady, but she looked at me more than usual. "Mom said you've been acting strange," she said quietly. I looked at her. "Do I seem strange to you?" She shook her head. "Just quiet." "But you've always been quiet." I reached over and held her hand. "People can be quiet and still see everything." She nodded like she understood, though I didn't expect her to carry it. The hearing was scheduled for early March. I dressed carefully: navy slacks, white blouse, the silver watch Richard gave me on our 20th anniversary. Not to impress. Just to arrive as myself. Elaine met me on the courthouse steps. She wore a gray suit and her usual expression, focused, unreadable. Inside, the room was smaller than I expected. Sterile. Bright. A judge with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses sat behind a raised bench. Lisa sat at the petitioner's table. Tom beside her. Neither looked at me when I walked in. Elaine opened our side with a clear statement: the respondent was of sound mind, managing her life independently, and under no obligation to surrender legal authority over her person or property. Then Lisa began. She looked appropriately concerned, like she'd practiced it. "She's been leaving the stove on," she said, voice soft. "She's forgotten appointments. She sometimes repeats stories. She's been very confused," Tom added. "Sometimes she doesn't recognize simple things. We're just trying to keep her safe." Elaine didn't flinch. She stood slowly, handed the judge a thick file. "Medical assessments from 2 physicians," she said. "Statements from her bank confirming transaction history and password updates. A recording of a conversation from February 3rd that shows an attempt to pressure the respondent into signing legal authority away." The judge looked up. "A recording?" Elaine nodded. The document was presented under the guise of casual conversation. But the language used, combined with the petition now filed, demonstrates intent. There was silence. I stood. Not because Elaine told me to, but because I wanted to. "Your Honor," I said, "my children believe love means control. That concern justifies intrusion. But I've paid my bills. I cook my own meals. I remember every betrayal, and every kindness. What they've mistaken for confusion is simply the silence I kept out of respect." The judge looked at me for a long moment. Then he turned back to Lisa. "Do you have medical evidence? Police reports? Any objective incident that supports diminished capacity?" Lisa's face went still. Tom shifted in his seat. "No, Your Honor," Lisa said finally. "Then I see no grounds for guardianship," he said. "Petition denied." He banged the gavel once. Firm. Final. Elaine touched my arm lightly. "That's it," she said. "It's over." Lisa stood and left the room without looking at me. Tom lingered, maybe hoping I'd say something. I didn't. Outside, the sky had turned soft with light rain. I didn't open my umbrella. I just walked. Elaine offered to call me a cab. I declined. "I need to do one more thing," I said. That evening, I packed the last of my things. The house felt like a stage set after a play, quiet, empty, no longer mine. I left the keys on the counter with a note for the realtor. By the next morning, I was gone. The lake apartment was already waiting. The deed transferred. The utilities in my name alone. That night, I slept deeply. No noises. No papers to sign. No locked doors behind me. Just air. And breath. And freedom. The lake was still in early morning. I watched it from the balcony, arms folded over a sweater I hadn't worn in years, the one Richard always said made me look like I taught poetry. Below, the water was glass, untouched by boats or birds or children. It reminded me of myself, in some ways. Not empty. Just undisturbed. The apartment had started to feel like mine. It wasn't just the furniture or the photographs I'd framed for the hallway. It was in the way I moved. The way I woke without checking the time, or who needed what, or where I had to be. My routines were small, and they were mine: morning tea, walking the shore path, tending to the herbs Emma and I had planted in cracked ceramic pots. Thyme, rosemary, chives. She called them our sorcery plants. I let her. Emma came every Sunday. No exceptions. She brought stories from school, little gifts, a pine cone, a drawing, a note folded into 16 pieces. One week it was a bracelet made from embroidery floss. Another, a hand-drawn card that said, "You are my roots." I kept them all in a small wooden box beside my bed. Lisa never called. Neither did Tom. But that didn't surprise me. Emma said once, as we were watering the plants, "Mom's always quiet after I come back from your place." Not mad. Just, like she's chewing something bitter. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to. That summer, I joined a book group at the library. 6 women, all over 60, most with their own stories. Some had been teachers. One was a nurse. Another had lived in Japan for 2 decades and barely spoke above a whisper. We read slowly. Mostly memoirs. No one cared about deadlines. We gathered in folding chairs with chipped mugs of tea and shared memories the books stirred loose. One afternoon, Clara, the woman from 2 doors down, showed up at my door with a bag of plums. "Too many from the tree," she said. "Figured you'd know what to do with them." I made jam. Real jam, with lemon and sugar and the kind of attention I used to reserve for holiday dinners. I labeled each jar with the date and a single word, August. Because it was enough. That month, I also finished transferring the rest of my accounts. Elaine helped, though most of it I handled myself. Everything in my name. No shared access. No lingering permissions. The old house closed officially at the end of August. I received the final payment in a wire transfer that appeared without fanfare. I watched the number populate in my account and felt nothing like triumph. Only relief. The quiet kind, like a breath you didn't know you'd been holding. In September, Emma brought a school project, family tree. She showed me the branches. Names written in careful pencil. Her mother. Her father. Uncle Tom. Her other grandparents. Then, halfway down the page, a tiny offshoot with just one word, Nana. I looked at it for a long time. "She said I could only pick one thing to write under your name," Emma explained, almost shy. So I wrote, "Safe." That night, after she'd gone home, I sat in the dark with that paper beside me. I didn't cry. I just stared at it. That word, printed in her hand. Safe. Not smart. Not generous. Not helpful. Safe. It was the most accurate thing I'd ever been called. Later that fall, Lisa sent a letter. Not a petition. Just a note. No return address, but I knew her handwriting. It said, "Emma talks about you constantly. I know you won't believe this, but I never meant to hurt you. I don't know how things got so tangled. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. There was no apology. But maybe that was all she had in her. I didn't respond. Sometimes silence is a full sentence. In winter, the lake froze. I'd never lived somewhere with a view like that, the stillness, the clean sweep of white across the water. Clara and I sat by the railing with coffee, wrapped in old quilts, talking about everything except our children. On Christmas morning, I made cinnamon bread from Richard's recipe. Emma helped me knead the dough, her small hands dusted with flour. "Do you miss Grandpa?" she asked, not looking up. "Yes," I said. "Every day." She nodded. "Mom says he was quiet like you. Like the good kind of quiet." I smiled. "He was." She reached for my hand and gave it a small squeeze. That was all. By spring, I'd grown accustomed to the sound of no one asking me for anything. No forms slid across the table. No voice on the phone saying, "We just want what's best for you." I started writing again, not anything for others. Just reflections. A little notebook I kept by the bed. One entry read, "They tried to take everything. But I remembered in time. Not because I was strong, but because I was paying attention. And sometimes, attention is enough." Another read. "I miss the girl I was at 30. But I wouldn't go back. I earned this peace. It didn't arrive by grace. I carved it out, inch by inch." Emma grew taller. Her questions sharper. One day, she asked why I didn't live near her anymore. "Because sometimes," I said carefully, "people who love each other still need space. Grown-ups don't always know how to love in the right way. But it doesn't mean they stop loving." She nodded, as if she'd already started learning that for herself. Years from now, maybe she'll remember this place, the scent of rosemary on the balcony, the way we watched birds land on the water, how I never asked her to be anything other than who she was. I hope she carries that with her. I hope she remembers I stayed. And that when it counted, I chose myself. The envelope was heavier than it should have been. Thick cardstock, the county seal embossed in the upper corner, my name spelled out in sharp black type. I set it down on the kitchen table and stared at it like it might open on its own and save me the effort. I already knew. I slid it open with the butter knife from Richard's old set, dull and clean. I unfolded the document and read the words slowly, aloud, as if hearing them might make them sound less ridiculous. Petition for legal guardianship. Petitioner, Lisa and Fisher. Supporting statement, Thomas R. Fisher. Filed, County of Millbrook. They hadn't even bothered to warn me. The justifications were laid out neatly, evidence of memory lapses, signs of confusion in financial behavior, risk of self-harm due to poor judgment, no current designated medical proxy. They made me sound like a woman wandering traffic in her bathrobe, not someone who did her taxes by hand last spring. I set the letter down, stood up, and walked to the sink. The faucet was dripping, like always. Tom was supposed to fix it months ago, before everything shifted. I turned it tighter, then stood there with my hands braced on the edge of the counter, staring out into the backyard. The herb garden still needed weeding. A squirrel darted up the fence post and vanished. Life moved on like nothing had happened. I wasn't surprised. That was the worst part. Shock would have been a relief. Instead, it felt like confirmation. I called Elaine. She picked up on the second ring. "I was expecting this," she said calmly, before I even finished explaining. She told me to come in the next morning with the petition and anything I had, recent bank records, utility payments, anything that showed competence and routine. "I already started a file," she said. "We'll file a formal objection before the end of the week." I didn't ask how many other mothers she'd done this for. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor in front of Richard's old filing cabinet, pulling out folder after folder. There were old wills, investment records, property deeds, and check registers going back 20 years. I found the receipts from Emma's art classes, the ones I'd paid for after Lisa said the tuition was too steep. I found grocery lists written in my own careful print. I found the letter Richard wrote me during our 25th anniversary trip, tucked behind a tax return. "You'll always be the one who remembers the details," he wrote. "That's your strength." I fell asleep in the armchair with that letter in my lap. In the morning, I was ready. Elaine's office smelled like lemon polish and old carpet. She wore her glasses pushed high on her head and motioned for me to sit without speaking. I handed her the petition and my bundle of papers. She flipped through it methodically, marking a few sections with post-it notes. "They're overreaching," she said. "They have no medical documentation. No police reports. Nothing substantiated." "They have each other," I said. Elaine nodded. "But that's not enough." "Not anymore." She laid out our plan: file an immediate objection, gather formal evaluations from my physician, pull records from my online accounts to show activity and management, and prepare a witness list if needed. She wanted photographs too, of the house, the kitchen, even the garden. "Anything that shows stability," she said. For the next week, I moved like someone preparing for battle. I got a checkup from Dr. Lowell, neurological tests, reflexes, memory games. He laughed at the idea that I was losing my mind. "You remember more about my kids than I do," he said, signing off the letter on his pad. I printed every bank statement from the past 12 months. Highlighted grocery purchases, online utility payments, Emma's school supply receipts. I took pictures of the spice rack I alphabetized, the organized sock drawer, the expired prescriptions I'd properly disposed of last month. Elaine was relentless. "It's not just about proving you're competent," she told me. "It's about showing that their claims are part of a pattern. A narrative they're building for their own benefit." The hearing date arrived. A Thursday. I wore navy slacks, a cream blouse, and the watch Richard gave me for our 20th anniversary. I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual that morning, not to check for flaws, but to remind myself of my own face. What they thought they could erase. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Pale green walls. Scuffed floor. A water cooler in the corner with a paper cone stuck in the spout. Tom and Lisa sat across the aisle, speaking in low voices. Lisa looked over once, but quickly turned away. Tom didn't look at me at all. Elaine opened our side with a formal response to the petition. "There is no medical evidence supporting this claim," she said. "There is no pattern of behavior that suggests incapacity. What we have instead is a family dispute over control, masked as concern." She handed over our packet, 60 pages of documentation. Updated medical evaluations, transaction logs, photos, emails, time-stamped correspondence. Even the audio recording of that dinner, where they casually suggested I sign over power of attorney, just in case. Lisa stood and began her statement. "We love our mother," she said, her voice small and rehearsed. "But we've seen changes. She's become more isolated. She's withdrawn from family decisions. She's paranoid. She canceled a joint bank account without telling anyone. She lives alone," the judge said. "That's not unusual. But we're worried," Tom added. "She's hiding assets. She's become distrustful. We just want to protect her." Elaine stood again, voice calm. "She revoked their access after they attempted to pressure her into legal arrangements that would have given them control over all her finances." The judge nodded. "I see. Mrs. Hammond, would you like to speak?" I rose. "I know what's happening," I said simply. "It's not confusion. It's betrayal. I've cooked meals and covered tuition and rewritten my will more times than I can count, for their benefit. And now that I've chosen to keep what's mine, I've suddenly become incompetent. It's not my mind they're worried about. It's my independence. Silence followed. The judge flipped through the binder once more. Then she closed it with a soft thud. Petition denied, she said. Full rights retained. Case dismissed. Lisa blinked rapidly. Tom stood like someone had struck him. Elaine touched my arm lightly. We're done here. We left the courthouse without a word. The sun was too bright for the parking lot. Everything looked exposed. That night, I walked the backyard one last time. The roses Richard planted were blooming early. I trimmed one and brought it inside, set it in a jar by the sink. The next morning, I called the realtor. I'm ready to list, I said. And I was. The "for sale" sign went up a week after the hearing. A small white post planted in the lawn, angled just enough to catch the morning light. It looked out of place, too clean, too sure of itself. But I left it there. The house didn't need my defense anymore. By then, I had already packed most of what mattered: Richard's watch, the teacup Emma painted for me in second grade, the folder of documents Elaine helped me reorganize. I left behind the heavy things, the buffet table no one used, the cabinet stuffed with serving platters I hadn't touched since Tom's engagement party, the mattress with Lisa's spilled nail polish still soaked into one corner. What I took fit in 6 boxes. That's all. The apartment I'd found was 35 minutes away, right by the lake. Nothing grand, just 2 rooms, a modest kitchen, and a balcony overlooking the water. The windows caught the morning sun. The floors creaked softly when you walked across them barefoot. There were no family photos on the walls, no inherited clocks or embroidered pillows. Everything in that space was mine. The first night I slept there, the silence felt like a held breath. But not an empty one. More like the kind that comes after a song ends. I sat up in bed for a while, listening. The distant hum of the lake, the soft brush of wind against the glass. Nothing else. No footsteps above. No voices behind closed doors. No one needing me. No one watching. In the morning, I made tea and stood barefoot on the balcony. The air smelled faintly of pine and lake mud. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. Emma came that Sunday. She arrived with a backpack, a stuffed bunny, and a serious look that aged her 5 years. She scanned the apartment with wide eyes, taking it in like a museum exhibit. It's small, she said. I nodded. Yes. But it smells like you. We set up her sleeping bag in the living room and taped her drawings to the fridge. I gave her a little watering can and showed her the potted herbs we'd planted: thyme, rosemary, mint. She dubbed it our island garden and insisted we name each plant. The rosemary became Clara. The mint, Biscuit. Later, she curled into my side on the couch and whispered, I like it here. It feels calm. It did. Calm without effort. She came every week after that. Sometimes she brought a school book. Other times, nothing at all. Once she handed me a paper folded into tight squares. I opened it carefully. Inside. You are the only grown-up who makes me feel safe. No signature. Just that. I pressed it flat and slid it into the back of my notebook, between a grocery list and a draft letter I never sent. Lisa never called. But she sent a letter. No return address. Just my name, written in her old hand, the one I remember from school permission slips and birthday cards. The note was brief. I know we hurt you. I don't have an excuse. Only that everything felt like it was slipping, and I panicked. Tom said it was practical. He said you'd understand eventually. But I see now that wasn't fair. Emma talks about you all the time. She sleeps better on Sundays. That's all. I folded it in half and put it away. I didn't write back. Sometimes people say what they need to, not what you need to hear. That fall, I joined a book club at the library. 6 women, all retired, most alone. We read slow, quiet stories. Memoirs. Novels about widows starting over. No one took notes. No one argued. We sat in a circle and shared what the stories reminded us of: lost husbands, old jobs, the daughters who drifted, the sons who stopped calling. I used to think family meant loyalty, one woman said. But I think now it just means closeness. And not everyone close to you is safe. We nodded. We all knew. Clara, the neighbor from 2 doors down, brought me plum jam one day. I heard you bake, she said. These are from my tree. I made a tart and gave her half. We didn't talk about children. By winter, the lake froze. Emma and I watched the ducks waddle across the surface like tiny comedians in feathers. She brought hot cocoa mix in a thermos and declared the balcony our secret cafe. We sat on folded blankets and named the clouds. One night in December, the phone rang just after 9. I picked it up out of habit. It was Tom. "Hi, Ma," he said. His voice was tight, brittle. I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry." About the way it all went down. I didn't answer. "I was scared," he added. "Not of you. Of what comes next. When you lose your job. Your house. Your place in the family." I waited. He let the silence stretch too long. "I hope you're well," he said. "Emma misses you. So does Lisa." I know she doesn't say it. Still, I said nothing. We both knew why he'd called. It wasn't just regret. It was also insurance. A thread thrown across water, just in case I still held the other end. I hung up without a word. 2 days later, a bouquet arrived at my door. White tulips. No card. I didn't bring them inside. Spring came late that year. The lake thawed in slow pieces, the ice cracking like old glass. I started walking every morning, tracing the shoreline while the fog still hung low. Birds came back. The scent of pine deepened. I found a rhythm. One morning, I wrote a new note in my journal. They don't have to love you to feel entitled to you. Another. I gave away years like teaspoons of sugar in other people's tea. But now the pot is mine. I decide what gets poured. I still think of Richard. Some nights I imagine him sitting on the balcony, legs crossed, reading glasses low on his nose. He'd say I did the right thing. He always said silence could be a shield, but also a sword. "You wait," he used to say. "You wait until they think you've gone still. Then you move." Emma grows taller each week. Her laugh is changing, less squeaky, more thoughtful. She calls this place our retreat. She started writing stories in a notebook I bought her. In one, she wrote about a girl who ran away to an island where no one could lie. She said I was the girl. That she was, too. I keep that page in my drawer, next to my deed, my will, and the sealed envelope that outlines everything they'll never see. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not trying to fix what was broken. I'm just here. Breathing air no one else controls. Drinking tea I brewed myself. Turning the porch light on and off only when I want to. No one takes from me now. And if they try again, they'll find I'm not the same woman they remember. I didn't disappear. I reappeared.